Good morning.
Hi, Paulette. How are you?
I'm doing fairly well. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
That's good.
Good morning. This is Allie.
Hi, Allie. I'm glad you're here. I'm just going
Me
to check
too.
one thing. I'm going to be back in just 1 second here. Just 1 second. I'm glad to see you guys this morning. I hope we get some folks in the Zoom room.
Yeah. How has it been going so far?
Well, we had a lively day yesterday. We had great presentations. We were a little bit light on attendance, I think, but I don't have any numbers from YouTube or Facebook, so I'm not sure until we get the numbers what it's going to look like finally, but it seemed to me like there were not very many in there, but maybe today we'll get more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Monday might be hard for folks in general, trying to get their act in order for the week.
Yes, that's true. It might be indeed. It might be indeed. This
Hi, Lee.
over here.
Hey, Holly.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Holly.
Hi,
Holly,
Paulette.
did you get the title slide I sent you?
When did you send it?
About 3 minutes ago.
No, I haven't looked. Let me check.
Okay.
It's only if you want to add it. I just figured it was easier to just add it to your slides than to try to just for me to share my screen.
I'm just going. Okay. No, I think we should just, if you don't mind,
So,
flip through, share screen as we present, like we each share our own screen.
Okay, I'm not going to share it then because my script is on my screen, so I can't share.
Okay, then
Yeah.
yes, I will accommodate you in that. I'm sorry, I missed.
Thank you, Holly. I'm
You're
sorry.
welcome.
I should have been more explicit. I thought I was thinking of WebEx where you can share the PowerPoint as opposed to the screen. And then I realized that I don't think you can on Zoom.
we don't know. We're so new to Zoom. I'm sorry, Allie. We just barely
right.
know what we're doing.
It's fine. It's fine. I've only done Zoom for fun things. I haven't done Zoom for work. I use WebEx or Blackboard Collaborate for work. So
I have had some requests to see yesterday's programming on recordings. So I told them I didn't know, but I would ask. And we would see if we could get those recordings up. Good morning, Mochi. Your mic isn't on. We have a chat down here. There. Yesterday in the cold rain, I had to go to school. The reporter from 24 wanted to see me. He made me go out in that cold rain. And then he put together the weirdest thing and showed us in the room from last year. So I just thought, well, this is surreal. I would have, if he hadn't made me go out in the cold rain, I would have said, well, at least he did something. He gave us a shout out, but geez, he made me go out in the cold rain.
I'm
And I
sorry.
was getting pretty cozy. I was making a cup of tea and I got the email. So Pickle Press, the other one for Channel 13, I thought did a very nice job because she actually previewed everything we were going to do. She explained the history a little bit. She went into the theme for the year, and then she wouldn't have had to have even had a quotation from me. It was perfect the way it was. And then she tucked me in at the end. I thought, well, at least you didn't make me go all the way over there. But hers, I wouldn't have cared if she hadn't put me in it because I really liked her telling what we were doing and so on. So I see that Mojizola's here. We don't have any of our monitors here yet. Like to have
It's a
some.
little early yet, isn't it?
Is it? Maybe
Well, yeah, it's 12:01, so we're not yet fashionably late, as they say.
okay, we'll give them a couple minutes if you don't mind.
Holly, you're not wearing a ball cap today. Where's
No.
your filmmaker hat?
It's right next to me, but I've decided to let my hair down for the event.
It looks nice, Holly. It looks nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, you look
It's
nice.
quite a bit to handle.
I can relate, which is why most of my head is shaved, Holly.
Yeah. I haven't had it cut since before the lockdown, so not even trimmed. So it's crazy. So
Good for you.
wearing the hat is helpful. I am on Zoom all the time. I use Zoom as my teaching tool.
So Holly, is there a way to do the share without sharing? Like, can you share just a PowerPoint and not your screen on Zoom?
You can share a window. Yeah, you can upload a file, sure. So if you go to chat, you'll see there's a file upload there.
Oh, I see. And then from there, you can share it on the
Well,
slide.
Or everybody could download it.
Oh, no, you know how like, or maybe, I don't know, in WebEx, you can just, when you click share, you can click like which application you're sharing, like your.
Yeah, you can do that here as well.
Okay.
So I usually share my entire desktop. But if you click on the share button, Allie, and I'll get out of there, you can see which window that you have open that you would want to share. And then you just click on it.
I tried that and it wasn't giving me, anyway, it's fine. I'll explore this interface later. It was only giving me an option for like my full screen, or like, it wasn't giving me an option for like the open file. Anyway,
Okay.
I'll explore this later.
Alrighty. I have 2 monitors, which is super helpful. If you can ever get multiple monitors set up, and this goes for everybody, it makes life a lot easier in these spaces, especially when teaching.
Yeah,
You can leave your student gallery on one monitor, and then you can look at your documents on another.
We aren't all fancy filmmakers, Holly, with all the most up-to-date technology
I
and
am
$1 million computers.
I am not that person either. I think I got my second monitor at Meijer, or maybe
Nice.
Best Buy.
Nice.
Maybe a little light.
Any old TV? Like, do you have an old TV around?
We do, actually.
Is it an HD TV?
It is.
Yeah, that would work just fine.
I think, but I would need an HD. I would need a cable, right? An HD in the HDMI port.
HDMI cable.
Yeah, the reason why it's old is because that port stopped working.
Oh, I have an extra TV here that I don't think I'll ever use again. You can have it if you'd like.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm glad we're getting some little things done. I'm kind of waiting for one of my other team members, so we have a monitor for some of these other things that I don't have access to.
Okay.
Because Arjun is helping with Zoom. That's right, isn't it, Arjun?
Well, I'm on Zoom. I also have the 2 Facebook and YouTube sites on. So
you can help me there if they can't come in. See, the thing is, they both have babies. Oh, if something's going on with the babies, they may not get here at all. They said they
Yeah.
both thought that, and then Sadia hasn't been feeling very well, but they both thought they would be here, but one never knows when they have babies like that. Anything can happen.
At any time.
Is anybody in Facebook or on YouTube, Arjun?
well, let's see, YouTube, I can see right now there are 9 people watching.
Hey, Okay. And how
and that's an improvement from yesterday. But
Yeah.
and then well, I can't really tell from Facebook where I need to look.
Well, that's all right. I think I will start then. I'm going to say, first of all,
Oh, I think there are
welcome.
five people watching on Facebook.
Well, maybe we'll get some more as we
Yeah.
get into it. There's Sadia. Good morning, Sadia.
It's good afternoon now.
Good See what kind of a day I've had already. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the second.
Afternoon. I'm sorry I'm late.
So don't I just said you have babies. What can you do? You and Symmetra each have a baby. So it's
Even
hard
that-
to say. You have to do what the baby wants before you're free. We understand that. I'm just glad you're here. So anyway, I'm just very happy that you're here. We are going to, will we, Arjun, be posting recordings of any of these things so people can hear them later? Will we be able to do that?
Yes, it takes a couple hours for Zoom to produce all the individual videos, and that's why I cannot really get started right away until the whole meeting is over.
That's fine. I just was amazed that I actually had people emailing, and then I got stopped a couple times in the hallway yesterday when I went to see the reporter with questions about watching them later. So that will be another way that we will get viewers, which will be nice. I don't think we'll know how many, but it will be nice that we will get them.
Get to
So
see my-
anyway,
Hold on just a second. I'm trying to get Richard in on this. I think he's having trouble getting in. So
oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't need to register or log in. Just that one link should be good enough for him to get in.
Just click the link and you're in.
there we go.
That's
All
right.
There we go. Back to Allie's side.
Welcome, Richard. So this is our 23rd year of celebrating the right to read and think freely. Long live the book. Yes.
Yes.
Now, when we started, we were in the bookstore down at Thackeray's for the first 3 years, and I just took some of my students with me, and we read books overnight, read from BAM books overnight. We always had the graveyard shift, and we would end it with breakfast at Papa John's. And we had no idea that anything would be happening. And I especially did not know that I would be in charge, no idea at all. So the early years, we kept no records. Why keep records for something you're just doing with the bookstore? And then we came to campus, and the first few years were a real struggle, but it took root, and now we are doing it every year. And I would really like to say thank you to the wonderful people who help and are on the coalition. It's just so great to have them. Arjun Saberhal has been putting up with my nagging for quite a while. Because I am sort of like a woodpecker on a tree, it's just tap, 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 tap. But he's very patient and he does an excellent job for us. And Symmetra, Dr. Srinivasan, has been involved with it for quite a while too. And she's always a great help. And she helps me sometimes with just understanding some of these tech things. And then we have Sadia Farouk, and Sadia is here with us from Pakistan. She took my class and went to her first BAM books in 2013. Now her husband is working on a second medical degree at the hospital here. So we have her back, and she's my unofficial voluntary assistant, and I'm really enjoying having them back in town. It's wonderful. And her husband, Ali, helped us get this set up so we could go to 3 different places. And he's been a great help, and he loves books and reading. And so we're very fortunate to have him with us. And then Laura Mitchell was one of my graduate students who got her master's, and she's a UT alum. She is also a huge help. We did the door prizes in her, well, you have to do them according to the CDC guidelines. So it was quite a show in our gloves and our masks, and doing everything the way we were supposed to. And she's been with us for quite a while too. So, and then we have another one, Josie Schreiber, who's taking care of her 2 babies who are under 3, and she'll be back. But she just right this minute could not do it. But we look forward to her returning. And that's the thing. I might coordinate it, but nothing would happen without these other people. They all do so much to help and to come up with ideas. Just unbelievable. And the hours that Arjun has put into this year. You know, there should be some kind of huge award, and Ali has put a lot of hours into it too. Of course, I put hours in, but it's just would be impossible without their help. Now, this is our time to recognize the power of reading and the meaning that reading brings to our lives. If we were not allowed to read what we wanted, somebody could control our thinking. We wouldn't live in a democracy any longer. So it's very important. And another reason that I just love this holiday is because so seldom do we ever think about the joy that reading brings to our lives. Reading is natural. It's like breathing. So what's the big deal? We don't really pause to think about the power of books, the way a book can take us to places we couldn't get to otherwise and show us the interior of the heart. And so it's 23 years in. I would like to show you the mayor's proclamation, but I think I will do that after the first presentation, since they have their slide up already and are raring to go.
Well, I can take it down if you'd like.
Could you for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can see
There you
His
go.
Honor the Mayor. There's Sumitra. Hi. Glad you're here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm going to share the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is so weird. Well, as long as you can see it, I can see your pictures, and then it's sort of off on the corner. But
Can you
anyway,
maximize the screen, Paulette?
do I what?
Can you maximize
I
the
think
window?
it's only a partial screen on your end.
Oh, and now I can't.
The
because
green, the green round button.
The green round button
Top left.
on the top left, green round. See the red, yellow, green, further to the left.
I don't have it.
Yes, you
I
do.
have,
On the
I
title,
have-
on the title bar, Paulette, just
Yeah.
there
yeah,
we go.
Yeah.
there we go.
Maybe that'll work. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I see your pictures, but can you see the whole thing?
Yeah. I can
Yeah,
see.
sort of. Just the border is, missing. I think that's because of the gallery view. But yeah.
Well, the mayor was very kind to do this proclamation, and Thursday is going to be the official for the city of Toledo Read Banned Books Day. And he also sent us a clip that the press has been using. He did a little video. And so we're very grateful to the mayor. And I thought it was really, I don't know, I guess you can see it anyway. I have the boxes in the way. But I thought it was very kind of the mayor to do this for us. And it shows that reading and reading banned books and standing up for the right to read and doing away with censorship. This is something that our elected officials, some of them care about too. And we were very glad to get this proclamation from the mayor. So we've been spreading it around, trying to get people to see it. So rah, rah, hooray for our mayor, Wade Kapsowitz. Yay!
Yay, 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 yay.
Yeah, snaps. And so I will stop sharing that, but it is wonderful to get some support. And I appreciate everybody who is here this morning. And without further ado, we are going to go into our first presentation. This is HIV in the Rust Belt. They are making a film about David's house. And Holly, is the film called Compassion?
No, it's called, well, it's loosely right now called HIV in the Rust Belt. But the film itself is about David's House Compassion and residents and people who serve David's House Compassion.
Well, thank you. I will let you guys take over then.
Okay. Go ahead, Allie.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who has been part of organizing this virtual banned books vigil. It's been really fun to see it all come together, and I know it must be an incredible amount of work. And it feels even more important in this era of fake news that we sort of celebrate and think about the power of free speech, right? So my name is Allie Day, and I'm an associate professor in disability studies here at the University of Toledo. And in addition to thanking the College of Arts and Letters for investing in all of our research and scholarship, Holly and I want to particularly thank the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs for awarding us an Interdisciplinary Research Initiation Award this past summer. What we want to do this afternoon, we're going to sort of present in 3 parts. So what we want to do this afternoon is to show you all a bit of the film that Holly and myself and Lee have been working on in collaboration with Sue Carter and Richard Meeker at UTMC's Ryan White Clinic, Sarah Mouch in the University Archives, and Lee Fernside, independent artist and grant writer. We also have had a few amazing camera operators and assistant directors, Gabe, Ali, and Marcus, all students and or graduates of the film program here. So I'm going to begin with giving a broad overview of the film and how the project came into being, as well as some of the things I'm thinking about as a disability studies scholar and co-producer of the film. Following that, Holly is going to walk you through some clips of the film in progress, and then Lee Fernside, co-producer and photographer, is going to show some stills and talk about where the project goes from here. So the film, which we are calling HIV in the Rust Belt, comes out of a larger initiative that I began about 5 years ago in the aftermath of some field research that was contributing to my book project. As part of that project, I had the privilege of meeting and working with several folks at the Ryan White Clinic here in town and realized that many of my collaborators were longtime activists and community care workers in the HIV field. And the stories they told were strikingly different from what I had learned about HIV history, a history that when told nationally largely focuses on activism on either coast. So I began a digital oral history project with Sue Carter giving me names and contact info of nearly everyone she could think of that was still around. And I did this in starts and stops, working with the Kennedy Center to upload it online. Then last summer, 2019, Sue Carter approached Holly Hay and I about doing a film project to interview long-term survivors. Film is clearly not my purview, but I was eager for a meeting and recognizing the importance of documenting survivor stories. As we got together and brainstormed, Holly and I had never met before, it became clear that we could not produce a feature-length project in the 3 months that Sue originally proposed. She wanted something to premiere at the December 1st World AIDS Day event. But we could begin interviewing survivors. So on a hot day in August 2019, we interviewed 5 long-term survivors. 2 women, 3 men, 1 Latinx, 1 African-American, 3 white, 2 ex-felons, 3 parents, some queer identified, some straight. The stories were diverse. At Banned Books last year, we were able to screen some rough cuts of these interviews. Some of you may have been there. And we got an overwhelmingly positive community response. And so that is where the work we did this summer picks up. One of the threads through all 5 narratives of survivors was the appreciation or love for this place called David's House Compassion. And just a side note, it's called David's House Compassion because David's house was already taken as a name and they couldn't copyright it. So they added compassion to the end of that name. I had heard about David's house years ago in my early days of collecting oral histories and was struck by what seemed like the uniqueness of the grassroots organizing and the longevity and reputation of what became a kind of Toledo establishment. I was thrilled when Holly turned to me following our long day of interviews in 2019 and said, "What's David's house? That seems important." And I said, "That's the angle." So we set out this summer to try to tackle a telling of the story of David's House Compassion through the eyes of survivors who lived in or utilized its services, as well as employees and volunteers. I spent hours in the Kennedy Center archives, once lockdown permitted me to, reading David's House papers, all of which were donated years ago. Through 13 years of board meeting minutes, handwritten thank you notes, and fundraising flyers, I pieced together a timeline that begins in 1988 and ends in the early 2000s. I'm going to read a few excerpts for an essay that I've been writing for a special issue of Culture, Health, and Sexuality that I thought might help us connect well with some of the clips that Holly is going to show. It takes us a year to convince Sue to do an interview for the film. It also takes us a year to convince her colleague, Richard, who's here today, now in charge of fundraising and development for the Ryan White Clinic, but who worked weekends at David's house in the height of the epidemic, to be interviewed. It's another humid day when we meet in the front room of Rusty and Elaine's place, the former David's house. They sit side by side, matching Ryan White Clinic t-shirts that they coordinated in advance, disposable masks covering their mouths and nose, the beginnings of perspiration beginning to shine on their brows. We turn the fans off to control for noise during the film. The house has no central air. I asked Sue to tell me her story first. She removes her mask to breathe more easily and begins with a comfort that says she's told this story many times in her 30 years of AIDS service work. She calls herself a fluffy blonde who worked in window decorating after a college degree in interior design. She liked to go to discos with her male coworkers. She became close, best friends with one colleague, an out gay male who learned of and died from his HIV before anyone knew much about the virus. Sue threw herself into advocacy, beginning first with an informal buddy program, then serving on the board of David's house, and eventually going back to earn her MSW so she could be a social worker in the field. And this is why she knows everybody. Richard, too, became involved with AIDS service work after a friend was diagnosed with HIV and moved into David's house in his final year. Richard describes for me the LGBTQ scene in Toledo in the 1980s and early 90s, a time when the small, economically depressed city had 12 gay bars, each with a different night of the week featuring cheap drinks alongside drag shows or pool competitions. I learned that the Pancake House up the street from my own house used to share a space with a leather bar. I am delighted to think about this every time I walk my dog. It was through a close friend who lived at David's house that Richard first came to know it. When an opportunity to work as a weekend attendant opened, he jumped on it. It is through Richard that I learned of the incredibly popular SRO fundraisers that became Toledo's social event of the season. It is through Richard that I learned the room where we are sitting, the front parlor, served as a TV room for the residents. But when one resident couldn't navigate the stairs to the bedroom and was almost turned away from housing, the group gave up their television and turned the room into a private hospice room. I'm struck by the generosity and care embedded in this building, the ghosts of caring's past. I asked both Sue and Richard to tell me what they know about the early days of David's house, how they found the building, what kind of renovations were needed. The building itself is an old rectory owned by the Catholic Diocese. They were able to rent the building provided the group fundraised the thousands of dollars for renovation needed to make the place habitable. Sue tells us of the condoms found in the walls when they began demolition. Perhaps it's just hearsay. Neither Sue nor Richard nor anyone else I interview were present during the renovation. The condom story is one people like to tell, though. A seedy part of the Catholic a seedy past for this Catholic rectory, but suitable for an organization that promoted safe sex and provided free condoms in the height of Toledo's epidemic. I asked them to tell me about Sister Elaine. Sue exclaims, reminiscing, she was a character. I know this because she is written all over the archives, a figure that volunteers to head committees, who contacts the area diocese for available homes to renovate for the project, who people write thank you letters to in the dozen. She says that Sister Elaine had a strong personality, one that was divisive. She was someone who exclaimed when a resident was being obstinate and rude, quote, "I don't care if you have AIDS, you don't get to be an asshole." No one knows what happened to Sister Elaine. After the first few years of board meeting records, the paper trail ends. I know David's house housed consistently 5 residents at a time, its max capacity, for more than 12 years. I also know from archival records that the demographics changed, that the board discussed the need to pivot services toward Black women, many of them mothers. There was a discussion about whether the house should be just for gay people. While I don't have recordings or details from these board conversations, the archives have evidence of women and men living in the house together, of some in the Black community assisting in fundraisers, of tensions between the house and the Black church. There's also a fundraising plan in the late 1990s to build an extension of apartment housing as part of DHC in order to provide living accommodations for women with children. The building project becomes reconceived as a modest extension for community services, not housing. The early days of David's house, in so many ways, represent a form of disability justice. Disability justice is, quote, a movement building framework that would center the lives, needs, and organizing strategies of disabled queer and trans and/or Black and brown people marginalized from mainstream disability rights organizing's white-dominated single-issue focus, end quote. At the time when David's house was imagined, there was a robust independent living facility that organized around disability rights in town, and yet no collaboration between the Ability Center of Northwest Ohio appears in the written records of David's House Compassion. In context outside Toledo, I know that in order to achieve disability rights, there's a long history of white disability activists distancing themselves from multiply stigmatized populations, especially those living with a new virus at the time of the most active organizing of the ADA in the 1980s. Whatever the reason was for not more robust collaboration or long-term coalition building between HIV activists and disability activists in Toledo, the fact remains that David's house was doing disability justice work. As Patty Byrne writes, quote, a disability justice framework understands that all bodies are unique and essential, that all bodies have strengths and needs that must be met. We know we are powerful not despite the complexities of our bodies, but because of them. Disability justice holds a vision born out of collective struggle, drawing upon the legacies of cultural and spiritual resistance within 1,000 underground paths, igniting small, persistent fires of rebellion in everyday life, end quote. One of the things that most embodies literally disability justice in the way residents care is the way residents cared for one another, in addition to volunteers and staff. One resident we interviewed was Chico, and he writes of his friend, and he tells us of his friend Pete, for whom he delivered meal plates and turned on his favorite VHS, The Wizard of Oz. When Pete dies, Chico experiences the loss personally. This kind of crypt caring resonates with what disability justice organizers call care webs, informal networks of volunteers and friends that provide for one another, organizing systems of security and care when state and other formal resources fall through. At the same time that I am claiming the work of David's House as a form of disability justice, I question my assertion. The board members are primarily white, many LGBTQ identified, and I can only guess that some are seropositive. But many board members and employees are also straight, white, cis women. The long-term beloved CEO was a woman with grown children, beginning a social work career. Did they center knowledge of Black and brown people in their organizing? Yet, in reading the work of Leah Lakshmi Peepsnessa-Maricina, who identifies as a queer disabled femme, there's an important part of the early work of David's House that, if not disability justice work, is in coalition with disability justice. She writes, quote, many of us rely on state funding and services to survive and fight for things like the Affordable Care Act and the Americans with Disability Act to remain protected and expanded. But our focus is less on civil rights legislation as the only solution to ableism, and more on a vision of liberation that understands that the state was built on racist, colonialist ableism and will not save us because it was created to kill us, end quote. And indeed, the early organizing of David's House was focused on providing care, food, housing, end-of-life support, and not explicitly on state recognition or policy. In fact, David's House emerges because there were a few other local HIV groups providing support to local public health and state agencies, but no one was doing the work of direct care. Early board meeting minutes insist on not losing the focus of providing concrete care and resources for those with HIV and their families, chosen or otherwise. I wonder if the early organizing of David's House is reminiscent of the kinds of politics that Kathy Cohen famously insists upon when she writes of the AIDS epidemic and the queer community's resistance to addressing intersectional oppression. She calls us to form coalition based on shared relationships to power, understanding that when we do this, we decenter white middle-class politics. Cohen writes, quote, "I envision a politics where one's relation to power and not one's homogenized identity is privileged in determining one's political comrades. I'm talking about a politics where the non-normative and marginal position of punks, bulldaggers, and welfare queens, for example, is the basis for progressive, transformative coalition work," end quote. We might replace Cohen's punks, bulldaggers, and welfare queens with, quote, "homeless, formerly incarcerated drag queens and welfare queens," but the sentiment is the same. David's House housed a cross-section of those marginalized by HIV infection in relation to other forms of racist, sexist, homophobic, capitalist violence. And now I'm going to turn things over to Holly, who will walk you through some clips.
Hello. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Paulette and everyone. Hi, Richard. Hi, Sue. Paulette, I think your support is a testament of your passion for the work, and you know, that people want to be a part of this says a lot about you. So thank you.
Well, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. I'm going to show a 6-minute section of the interview that we did with Richard and Sue this summer. I don't know if they're prepared for this, but it's just the beginnings. It's actually the first time I've actually touched the footage this morning, but it will put Allie's words to life, so to speak, and we'll hear them telling a little bit of their stories of how they got involved in David's House, what the culture in Toledo was like at the time. Yeah, but again, it's only 6 minutes, so hopefully everybody should be able to see and hear just fine. So fingers crossed.
I got a degree in art from the University of Toledo.
Oh, hold on, my drive went to sleep.
And he came from San Francisco.
Let me start it over, sorry.
I got a degree in art from the University of Toledo, and I wasn't very talented. So I became a display person. I decorated stores. And I had a boss, and he came from San Francisco, and he got very sick one day. And he went to the hospital, and he never returned. We didn't know until years later what had happened to him, figuring it out. They never had the store, J.L. Hudson Company, was 100 years old and never had a woman display manager. So because no one wanted to come to Toledo from the big city of Detroit, I got to be the display manager. And I went to all these sales meetings and to New York and to gay bars with all these men. And I was the only woman. And I learned to appreciate my gay friends and what they went through. And in those days, some of them were married. They didn't want to be. Some of them were outlawed by their families. Some of them were told to go to church. Some of them were threatened with lobotomies. It was terrible. And so I did that work for a real long time. I decided I needed to do something more with my life. So I went back to school and became, while I was still working, and became got a degree in counseling. And I wanted to be a gay affirming counselor because there wasn't many around. Well, all of a sudden, one of my gay friends and some of my gay friends and the rest of my gay friends are saying, I got this thing called HIV. And my best friend, Harold, with my dance partner, my disco partner, he said to me one day, while we were still decorating stores, I went over to UT Medical Center and I got this test and I said, yeah, I've heard of that. It's in California and people get sick, but you're so healthy. By the time Harold died, I was his social worker and ordered hospice to his home. So I've been working in this field at the same hospital for almost 30 years. Before that, 2 years at the health department doing counseling. A year before that as a volunteer but David's house and anything else would have me be there, you know. So that I knew that that was what I was supposed to do. You know how you have a mission? You just know. I never questioned it, never had a second thought about it. AIDS got a name in '81. My boss probably died right about that time. But he had come from San Francisco, which is where the hotbed, San Francisco and New York, came to Detroit. No, he had these terrible headaches. I called him on the phone when he was in the hospital. He didn't remember who I was. He probably had cryptococcal meningitis. I was getting calls from the hospital saying, what kind of plants are you using? What kind of baskets do you have? We had imports from all over in our displays. They couldn't figure out why he died. And then years later, it was just like, oh, that's what it was.
I got involved in David's house in 1991. I came back from a short stay in California and came back to Toledo, and a friend of mine was living here at David's house at that time, and I would come over here to visit him at night after work and things like that. And then I was here from like March through the end of June, and my friend Todd that lived here told me that there was a position that was available for a weekend attendant here at the house. And so I submitted an application and had an interview set up with Rusty, who was the residence manager at that time, and did the interview. I left. At that time I wasn't driving, and I walked over to the bus station across the street. He walked out and hollered for me and brought me back in the house and told me that I had the job. And so I started 4th of July weekend in 1991 because of my friend Todd that lived here. And by August, mid-August, I think it was, he passed away. And you know, my career here started really with that weekend attendant position, where I basically would move in on Friday and leave on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And basically what, you know, that position did, or the, you know, the care positions that were there, where they were making sure that all the needs of the residents that lived here were taken care of. And there were many of those. There were some residents that lived here that were more able to do for themselves, and then there were some that needed constant 24-hour around-the-clock care, because at that time there really was a lot of nursing homes or hospice facilities didn't want to take clients that were HIV positive because of fear and stigma, and we're still battling that today. So that's really how I got involved.
It's hard to think of anything in terms of anything else but AIDS, but you can talk to the gay world and I can talk to the political world. I mean, it was a time of strong unions, working class town, but you know, the town had a heart when it came to people with AIDS. Maybe not people that were gay, but people with AIDS. Somehow that moved them to another level, and they did a lot of neat stuff, like City Council passed a non-discrimination act that you couldn't discriminate against people with AIDS in housing, and people were raising money. There was a couple competing organizations in town, as there always was. You know, if you read any book about any organizations that are growing, there's competition. But soon it was just one big group helping people with HIV and AIDS. And the center, I have to say, was our hospital and David's house, because no other hospital would take our patients. They'd be ushered out the back door, go to UTMC without even a referral. Go to David's house, can't get into a nursing home. Go to David's house, your family kicked you out. Go to David's house, you'll get some food. It was always that center of care for people with HIV.
Are we going to talk about this, Allie, or are we going to move on to Lee and then come back?
Holly, if there's anything that you want to say just right now in terms of like how you put that sort of segment together, what you were thinking about when you put that together, that might be helpful before we go on to Lee.
Okay. So what I've been showing up to this point in time is Chico's story, and I've been spending most of my time developing and authoring that. And most of the public screenings have centered around that. But today I wanted to try to give David's House a broader context. And so Richard and Sue are some of the vehicles that are able to do that. So in terms of what I chose to show today, it was just about, okay, how can I introduce the characters that are going to introduce the central theme of the film? And that was my decision making. So this is really very rough in terms of, this is sort of like like we sort of treated the content last year at Banned Books, which was a really nice launching pad, because we were just showing talking heads A-roll stuff. But the content of what was being said, I think, really impacted people. I've actually heard some great feedback last week at the Brown Bag Racial Justice series. So that was my decision making for today, just to try to give Richard and Sue some screen time and try to give David's House a little broader context to be understood.
Thank you, Holly. And I just want to say, I think in my essay, I said that their shirts were white and they're totally black t-shirts, which is like, how did my memory do that? So I'm going to change that in the final presentation.
Yeah, I'm really very excited. So my commitment now from this moment forward until the screening in December for World AIDS Day is to take their entire interview and to form it and to shape it into something with B-roll, specifically from the archive. Again, sort of broadening our understanding, the audience's understanding of what David's House was. Mm-hmm. And then cutting that either before or after or in with at least Chico's story to some degree. But we'll see. That seems like a rather big goal at this time to cut them together.
Right. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
We're gonna, I forget how long we have. We have until about 1 o'clock. Is that right? But we're going to have Lee sort of talk a little bit about the use of still photography in the film, and then sort of a little bit about where we might go from here. So Lee is our other co-producer.
And I just want to make sure that we thank the Ann Locher Fund also for their support of this project. And Holly, you have to stop sharing your screen so that I can share my screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm actually going to talk a little bit in reverse of what Ali said. So some of what you could tell from what Ali and Holly said is that there's a lot of stories going on. There's the stories of the 5 people that they interviewed 2 years ago, which is kind of wacky. All of the other people that Sue and others have referred to the production team, Richard and Sue themselves, and of course, all their archival material. So one of the big challenges is to try to figure out how to connect these stories with the larger stories of the systems that people exist within. I'm totally saying that for you, Hallie. And one way to do that is to really start to think about audience, because there is no such thing as a general audience, right? You can't say I'm making something for a general audience, because what does that even mean? So we're trying to break down who would be interested in this project. And so here are some of the different segments, audience segments that we thought of. And the PBS audience is actually very broad, even though I just said there is no such thing as a general audience. 86% of all television households watch a PBS show sometimes during the year. That's 211 million people in the US. PBS is actually the fifth highest rated network, for lack of a better word, after the big 3 and Fox. So we are going to try to distribute the final film through a distribution agency that programs work for the PBS member stations. But we also, distribution has a relatively limited life. And we are all committed to trying to figure out how do we also extend the life of this project beyond the distribution. Really, we've started to talk about this as a multi-platform project. That yes, we will have this feature film or series of short films using these materials that we've started to talk about. But are there other ways that we can access these different audiences through different materials? So can we create curricula or study guides and educational resources online that would make it appealing to either university programs and or high school programs to really use it as an advocacy and educational tool? Academic and conference presentations, because they are academics. That's what they do. I have to confess, I am a former professor, so I understand the need for that. But also, conference presentations are a way to connect with other professors in the field and to try to get them to be excited about screening the work in their classrooms. Really excited about that possibility. But also, Allie and I have started talking about, could this be a book for a general audience? So not an academic press, but a press like Beacon Press, which is an independent press that deals with kind of typically social justice issues, so that it can have another audience. And that's where the photographs come in. I've started taking photographs for the production, because all productions need still photographs for marketing, but thinking about, is there another life for those photographs? And what does it mean to photograph people with disease? So first of all, I should say, some of these images I'm about to show are graphic, but sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so what do medical photographs of disease look like today? This is shingles, but you can't see the person. The person is completely disembodied. All it is skin, granted a specific type of skin, skin and the condition. There's no context whatsoever. And it's easy for us to think about things as ahistorical, like this is what we expect from a medical photograph. So certainly this is what they've always looked like. And in fact, they're not true. So for me, again, as perhaps because I'm a former professor, I look back to art history for inspiration. And although these photographs I'm about to show you, they wouldn't have thought themselves as art history, but the archive of photographs. So when photography was invented almost 200 years ago, and in the early mid 19th century, everyone wanted to have their picture made. And there were studios that cropped up. And you see the same types of props that signal things about what the person who's having their portrait made, how they want it to be seen and perceived. Now, Matthew Brady was a very famous photographer in New York. He photographed US politicians, and in this case, the Emperor of Mexico. But with this person, how he was dressed, how he was standing, the studio props, in this case, just the curtain and the chair, really signaled to the viewer who he was, his status, what he was supposed to be in the world. And I just want to contrast that with a portrait of a woman with I don't even know what her condition is, but if you can see her knee, she's got something going on. And you can tell that there's very similar pose, similar props. It's a studio portrait, except that it also pictures her medical condition. So just to bring home the point that it was as if she walked in off the street to a portrait studio and used the same visual language of 19th century portraiture to have this medical document made. It's a far cry from that shingles picture in which the person affected was not even a person at all. Even when we're starting to see, this is syphilis, late stage syphilis, more kind of close-ups of conditions, still they're using the language of a portrait photograph. We still see her hat and her earrings and that she's on a chair. Again, a far cry from portraying disease as just disease and not with a person attached. So those are some things that I'm thinking about as trying to make these photographs. Now, some of it is also that we're making this during COVID. So whenever anyone sees this picture for the rest of our lifetimes, this will signal coronavirus, right? So in a way, I am already having to picture disease, even if this particular person isn't affected, as far as we know, right? So this is Chico, one of the people that was interviewed. And then, so because we can't picture his HIV, perhaps I can instead picture him with all of his stuff. Because even if you don't know his stuff, you can't see the stuff in the background because of the shallow depth of field, you can still tell that this is a guy who has a lot of stuff. And stuff is important. So these are things that I'm thinking about as I'm trying to make these photographs as part of the project as a whole, is how do we portray people? Like, what are some of the questions that can give them like an authentic representation, if that's even like a legitimate thing? How can I use my camera to show these, the characters from within our film? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. That was really kind of my thing. But I would be interested to hear if anyone has questions for any of us, since we have 9 minutes left.
We have some time. So do we have questions? And we have to wait. There's a slight delay on our social media. My friend Donna from Arkansas sent me an email. She's on YouTube, so that's exciting.
Did she send it about this project?
She said she's watching.
Okay.
Just
Hi,
real
Donna.
neat that she's watching, so.
One thing that I'll say, and just in response to some of the ideas that Lee threw out there, is that in disability studies, there's been quite a bit of writing by people, some by people who have been pictured in medical textbooks, to talk about that disembodiment and subject, their subjectivity and the kind of violence that does. And also people thinking about the historical use of photography, right? That photography really develops as a field and as an art form alongside the medical field, right? So the medical field is gaining prestige and reputation in the late 1800s, right? And so those two things are coinciding with one another. They need one another in the early 20th century to really work together. So I think the relationship between photography and visual image and disability and disease is actually a really important one that will be interesting as we move into thinking about quote unquote invisible disabilities like chronic illness, like HIV or corona, and sort of thinking about what it means to make those visible through the film.
Well, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I was picking up on your work with the Kennedy Center. I work at the Kennedy Center myself, and I'm aware of the David's House Compassion collection, and I was thinking, should I digitize some of those for our digital repository? But due to the personal nature of some of the content, I did not really know how I should proceed. But perhaps it's something that I can work in collaboration with you or the Disability History Program and see what would be helpful to put up there, and something that would be okay for public access, but at the same time it would keep the private stuff out, because it can be intensively personal, and because of the HIPAA and other kind of issues that you may violate if you put things up. But at the same time, if I can make this more relevant for your academic program and your curriculum, I think it would be a great addition if we could work together and see what kind of matter would be, what kind of items would be suitable or helpful for your particular program, and so that they can access it online. Because as you mentioned, access to the Kennedy Center is very limited. And so adding the digital collections would probably be timely these days. And so, we can meet or discuss this and see what would be something that you would be interested in seeing on, and then we can add that as a digital collection on our digital repository, which is utdr.utoledo.edu.
Yeah, Ajahn, I think that's an an awesome idea because I've been working with Sarah over there just to pull the archives, right, and to dig into the boxes. And she's also been sort of recruited into everything that we film. All of the interviews that we do for the film are also going to go into the digital oral history archive, right? So to have visual things alongside that from the David's House papers would be awesome. One of the things that I can say about the archive is that it doesn't include any personal medical information of any resident, for instance.
Okay.
So most of what's, the bulk of it is board meeting minutes, which for me are fascinating and amazing to sort of think about the relationships and evolving relationships. But there's also fundraising materials that are in there that I think would be visually really interesting. And thank you notes, I think are really interesting and wonderful to sort of bring embodiment to the project in some way. There's some photographs, like sort of public photographs from news stories and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But there's no protected HIPAA information in there. Even when they talk about, if they talk about residents like in a board meeting minute or something, if they're using their first name, which sometimes they're not even using their first name, like they're not recording that. And then they have like in director reports, they have like statistics of residents, so you know, like, oh, we had 2 women living here and whatever, but you don't have any sort of protected private information in those archives. So that's something that they've been really careful about archiving and protecting, which is one of the awesome things about you guys over at the Canada Center. There's also other archives too that are helpful. Like we have archives from Caesar's Show Bar, which is one of those amazing bars that Richard talked about, and I think that has some amazing like visual things that could also be adjacent and sort of add to the visual pieces of the film. So yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff there. So yeah, we'll definitely, I just wrote down email Arjun to talk about the archive. So I will be in touch with you for sure. That would be great.
Sure, we had these in our in a recent physical exhibition at the Kennedy Center, I think a year ago or so. And I did a virtual exhibition, so I added some of that material there, but it's not in our digital collection per se. I would keep them by collection. But yes, definitely that's something that we can do. And I don't know, where do you keep your digital oral histories?
I'm going to loop in Sarah, and the 3 of us will start talking and we'll figure out some of the logistics.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I had a question. Is there a media relations person or an attorney at David's Compassion House that you have to go through to do your filming and interviewing?
So that's a really great question. So David's House no longer exists as an entity, right? So it closed, and they were incorporated under another nonprofit entity that then was incorporated under another nonprofit entity. And so we had to sort of trace who has the rights to this archival material for filming. And so what we found out was that through a series of sort of, I forget, nonprofits merging, right? Equitas Health, which is a big HIV org in town and in the state, they had the rights. So it took a little bit of fact finding and trying to find the right person to talk to over there for them to give us the rights to film that project. And they weren't even really sure what I was asking, and I'm not sure they knew that they had these papers, right? So that's one of the interesting things about working in the archive is that if on the time that they're donated, they don't give the rights over to the archive, then you have to hunt down and figure out, well, what entity actually owns these. And so that took some work this summer to try to trace that down, but they have given us the rights for filming that material.
Well, I'm glad you were able to do that.
I just noticed that it's 12:59, and I know that there's another presentation at 1.
I do want to give away some prizes if there's anybody in the house anywhere, any of our 3 venues. I just think this was marvelous. I really enjoyed it. It's such vital social justice work. Thank you for rah, rah, rah.
Thank you, Paulette.
You're
Hopefully,
welcome.
we'll just press forward, and we'll have even more to share next year.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I will be knocking on your door.
Okay.
So, this is the 23rd annual Banned Books Week celebration. This year, not just one best day, but 4 best days. We are in day 2. I'm Professor Paulette D. Kilmer from the Communication Department. My students call me Dr. K, and I'm the coordinator and MC for this event. And it is my pleasure right now because we have such generous, believe me, the UT community is amazing. Usually we have a poster with 45 to 50 names of people from around campus who gave us stuff to give away. Online and with the CDC rules, we can't process and make sure things are safe. So we asked some of our friends we thought might help in a really bad budget year. The athletic department, thanks to Coach O'Brien and Adam Simpson, gave us a lot of nice stuff. Our first on-campus sponsor, the UT Federal Credit Union, they gave us a bunch of lovely things. The Honors College chipped in, as they always do. And Barry's Bagels gave us 2 gift cards. They've been with us. They were with us in the store because they'd bring us coffee and hot bagels in the middle of the night. So, and our last one, Phoenicia, Ed's always been a real big help too. He's always helped us. And without, I know the tension is just mounting here. Now, we have a prize for the Zoom room. We have 2 prizes for the Zoom room. It's all of us. So shall I just give them and one of you guys will get it? Or shall we move it to one of the other venues? What's your pleasure?
If I win, I will move it to another venue.
Okay, we'll do it that way. So you guys can decide when you win what you would like to do. So imagine a big drum roll. Oh, I have to also remind the students, the code word. We have students in the house anywhere. To get attendance for the HIV and the Rust Belt, your code word is pride. So the code word is pride. And I would like to share the screen just briefly. No, I wouldn't. Never mind. So I'll just close that. Never mind. We'll just move on. So let's start with a question about a book. Write your answer in the chat. And the first one who gets it right, now we have 3 $20 gift cards. 1 for the Zoom room. Students, where are you? Some of you come to the Zoom room. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. The second one is for Zoom. The third one is for Facebook. So we'll have 3 winners, we hope. That was the idea. And we have gift cards. The Provost, wonderful Provost. Rah, rah, Provost. The UT Barnes & Noble bookstore. Yay, Barnes & Noble. They helped from the very first year I came on campus. They've been a big supporter every year. The Honors College, yay, honors, rah, rah. They're always right there. The Dean at the College of Arts and Letters. Go Dean! The Communication Department Chair. Rah, rah, Ben. Vicki Kroll, great friend of ours. Great friend of ours, always is helping us. And then I gave some cards too. All right, so to get a $20 gift card to Barnes and Noble. I want you to answer this question in the chat. What popular series banned for witchcraft in 2000 was rejected for telling kids to make smart aleck comments to adults and to lie? This is a charge. His parents wanted this book, no kid to read it, because they said not only does it contain witchcraft, which is awful, but even worse, it encourages kids to make smart aleck comments to adults and to lie. There's a pretty awesome owl in it too. So there is a pretty, so do we have any answers? Does anybody know? Look at that, they all know. So Arjun, figure out who's first.
Well, there's a Harry Potter answer, Harry Potter in YouTube.
Okay, and so is there an answer in Facebook?
Not yet.
Come on, Facebook, you just heard the answer. $20 gift card. How much easier can it get than that? It's midterm time. You must be thrilled that you get one thing really easily and don't have to try to figure it out for yourself.
Who is the winner?
So who is our Facebook winner?
That's no Facebook. That's YouTube is Camille Sturdivant.
Okay.
Okay, Camille was here yesterday.
Oh no, there's a Facebook one too,
Facebook too.
and that's Chrissy Williams.
Facebook is Chrissy Williams.
Yeah.
And please get their emails so you can send them to me later. And we need a Zoom winner. So who was the first one to answer in Zoom?
Oh, okay. Let me check. That was Lee Fernside. Okay,
Okay,
Alison
Lee.
Day, Robert Meeker. We all win.
So Lee Fernside then wins a $20 gift card to BNN. Now, the next thing is really hard. You just about have to have a doctorate to know the answer to this one. What do you call a cow with a twitch? What do you call a cow with a twitch? This is for anybody from Wisconsin who might be listening. Yeah. My home ground. The dairy state. How much? Okay. Do we have answers?
We have
What do
one
you-
on Zoom.
You have one on Zoom.
Yeah, Richard answered.
That's cute, but that's not. Okay.
Okay, there's another one. Oh, okay. From
There's
Holly
somebody got it.
in Zoom.
Somebody in the chat. Tiara got it. And Tiara's in Zoom. So Tiara got it. Do we have somebody from YouTube with it?
Yeah. Oh no, but that's the wrong answer. If the first one was wrong, then
Zoom
obviously.
is, I think Zoom is Tiara. Is Zoom, Tiara, are you on Zoom?
Yeah, I wasn't the first to say that though.
You weren't? Well,
No.
who was the first?
I
Fully.
came
So who was the first to
I
say?
came right after Holly, I think.
Holly, did you get it?
I said beef jerky.
Then if you were first, you get the gift bag.
Well, thank you, but I will defer it to Tiara because my
Thank you.
wife already won one of the gifts. So I
Well,
would feel
that's
I won't take it off.
her wonderful honesty too.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you, Holly.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
So we will say then that Zoom is Tiara Medley. Facebook, do we have one for Facebook?
No, I don't see any answers on Facebook.
No?
Okay, hold on. No, that's.
What about YouTube?
Well, I have milkshake as an answer. But I guess that wasn't the right answer based on the Zoom answers.
No, it wasn't. And they are beef jerky. So somebody answer and you get a door prize on YouTube and Facebook. That should be easy enough to do. Long live the book. Give every book a chance.
Okay, so,
Read on. We have a winner?
well, there's a okay on Facebook. There's Mary Curtis saying
she's
beef
from my
jerky,
class.
and
Good
Emily Jordan
going,
on
Mary.
YouTube.
Who's on YouTube?
Emily Jordan.
Emily, also from my class. Also here yesterday. Okay, so we have winners. And I want to again thank the 3 scholars from HIV and the Rust Belt. Very good presentation, very important work. And I'd like to say this is the 23rd annual Banned Books Week Vigil. And it's a vigil because the battle for the First Amendment is never over. We always need to keep watch. We always need to stand up to protest against censorship. So that's why it's a vigil. It's a vigil because of the importance of noticing what's going right, noticing what's going wrong, and maintaining our commitment to always being behind freedom of expression. Now, little joke here, and then we'll move on, I guess. Suppose that ironing boards really were surfboards and they gave up on their dreams because they needed to make a living. I guess I need to get out more, but I thought that was really cute. Surfboards give up their dreams and become ironing boards so they can earn a living. They can work just like the rest of us. And since I'm not so very good at telling jokes, I guess, we shall move on. And I'm just really delighted that our next presenter is Dr. Barbara Mann. She has published extensively. She knows, she's a wise woman. She knows all kinds of things. She comes to us from the Honors College. She has been here before. We always enjoy having her join us because she's always insightful and teaches us things that we did not know. And her topic this afternoon is, oh, and if you hear the smoke alarm, I found 4 of them and changed the batteries. I have no idea where this last one is. I put so many in this apartment and I just can't find it, even with it peeping. So it's sort of funny. It would have been worse when all 4 of them were going, but I got 4 of them. I got up on my step stool and you have to get way up in the ceiling and I did it. But the last one is hidden. So That's because these are such hot topics.
But think of it as a timekeeper.
And we're just, yes, it's the timekeeper, and we're just burning with passion for this whole thing. So Dr. Mann is going to talk to us about banned female leaders of the Eastern Woodlands. And it's all yours now, Dr. Mann.
Okay, well, first I gotta figure out how to share.
Little green box on the bottom, and click it, and it should then let you.
Is that working now? Can
No,
everybody-
you have to- there, now it is. Good job. And then hit slideshow at the top of your PowerPoint. There, great.
Oh, no, I've got it. Okay. All right, well, I thought I was presenting yesterday, so the date's wrong, but here we are. Excuse me. And of course, I'm a little hoarse today. What else would happen? I thought I'd start out by telling you what the woodlands are, because I found that even Americans have no idea what the Eastern Woodlands are. So I found this handy dandy maps by Jelena Maxwell, and she's got the various parts of Turtle Island, which is North America, parsed out. You see the green here, and my little UR here has kind of got slid over in the wrong place somehow. But you are right here in the little corner of Lake Erie. All of this green is Eastern Woodlands, and what it means is it was entirely forest before the Europeans reigned. That goes a little past the Mississippi River, which is about here. And you don't see the Mississippi the way the rest of the Europeans do. We see it as going up to the Ohio and then turning and going up to the Allegheny, the Great Horned Serpent, proceeding down from the Great Lakes down to the Mississippi Delta. So this is all the woodlands, and we're talking about all the people that lived east of the Mississippi, more or less. All right. We are very involved with the stories of origin, which are completely different from Western European and, by the way, Middle Eastern stories, which is where the Europeans got their monotheism from, was the Middle East. Instead of monotheism, we have a multiplicity of spirits, none of whom are gods. They only know about themselves. By and large, the entire universe is parsed out into twin spades. There are spirits of breath, which tend to have a sort of a male cast to them, although they're not men. And then there's spirits of blood, which have a female cast to them, although they're not women. And this is a drawing here by Guyonus, who's Mohawk. It's one of the versions of how planet Earth came to be. And you see a Danzig or Yagandi, depending on the dialect you speak. She's coming down from Skyworld, Kentucky, with Skyworld, where here he is looking down as she's kind of falling. Planets are blood, which means the heart pumping, which means the marrow of the bone, which means the spleen, all places where blood products collect. That tends to be cast as female, although that's not a really good presentation. So is a gun, which is the, it can be a trickier wrinkled, but kind of female, not male. And then Uki is going to be the breath spirit, where he is up there. Sky means outer space, and he's up there in outer space. She's coming down. She's going to be creating female space of planet Earth. All the planets are female. And what this means is all the woodland cultures, we all have a version of this story, is that the woodland cultures are all matriarchal. Matriarchy does not mean women hate men, all men must die. It means that the female impulse of creation on Earth is a female impulse. The male impulse of creation's out there in outer space. So in the woodlands, identity goes through the first mothers, through the first daughters into the modern world. And I found this really neat picture of two Odawa clan mothers in the Toledo Lucas County Public Library archives. It's, I'm pretty sure, a mother and daughter, although they weren't sure themselves. It's from about 1890. So you can see what the Odawa women looked like in 1890. The Odawa are primarily up in Michigan. There's a little bit that comes down starting in the Swanton area, but mainly the people going west to Indiana of those groups, the Anishinaabe groups, are the Potawatomi. The Iroquois are lower Lake Erie. We're below Lake Erie. Toledo, Ohio is the cutoff area. In fact, the Oliver House was the old large council ground for all the people of this area. So we're sitting right now on Seneca land. But I thought this was a really neat photograph. And you can see the importance of the mother-to-daughter connection. It's really important to understand that gender does not work anything like it does in Western culture. In the first place, no human being is gendered. You don't have a gender. The jobs are gendered. Whatever job you're doing at the moment, you have that gender. So women can be made men, like for example, if you're going to be a soldier, you are now male. Men can be made women, for example, if they're going to be judges. Judging as a job is female. So the men are female at that point. We also have third and fourth genders. We didn't have trans because that's something that's allowed by Western medical science. It was not something that we could manage at that point. We had 4 genders. And the main thing to remember is that human beings are not really gendered. It's the job you're doing. That's a very common feature of matriarchies around the world, by the way. That jobs are gendered. All right, so in the Woodlands matriarchies and photos of all of us here are kind of cutting off what's going on. In the drawing from 1724, you can see a council, women-led councils, which is not something the Europeans know how to deal with, so they threw men into the women's councils here. But women's councils were for women. If you saw a man there, he was made woman to sit and listen to what the women said, and then go dressed as a woman to talk to the men's council and tell them whatever was sent for the men. But women held our own clan councils, men held the national councils. Women alone nominated all officers of all the clans and nations. And just think what the US Congress looked like today if only women could nominate people to office. We nominated men as well as women, but only women could do the nominating. We also impeached anybody that was getting out of line. That was our job alone. We alone owned all the food, all the housing, and all the land. Only women could declare war, and only women could call off war. And it wasn't women generally, it was grandmothers. Grandmothers are very hesitant to send the children out to kill each other. And by and large, in our wars before Europeans, people didn't get killed. The idea was not to kill somebody, it was just to push somebody off the field. And most of our wars were more like an Olympics competition. There were usually sports going on, and whoever won the game won the event. Get down the tail of turtle, which is Mexico, Central America, and with the Aztecs and then part of the Inca, you would have wars where people got killed up here. We outlawed killing people, we just didn't believe in war. We also alone were able to appoint soldiers to go. If grandmothers didn't say you were a soldier and you could go, you could not go because there was no war. Also, we controlled the agenda of the men's national councils. The men by law were not allowed to discuss an issue the women had not sent forward. So we had speakers, and a couple of the men that you saw on the prior screen, I can't get back to it because of my computer, but we would have men who would sit in the women's council and then take whatever message we had to the men's council. They dressed like women. They were completely outfitted like women, but they would take women's words to the men. And by converse, there would be women sitting in the men's councils dressed as men, identified as male for that purpose, coming to the women's councils to bring whatever men had to say. Here was in the picture there is they give you it. He was called Red Jacket by the Europeans. He was the speaker of the women to men. Now, a really funny thing was that when the Europeans first got here, the idea of a man dressing like a woman or a woman dressing like a man, that was an outrage. It was against law. It was horrible. You could get killed for it. So when they saw all our men come into their meetings, the European meetings, the traders, and they were dressed like women in skirts and dresses and wearing women's kinds of necklaces and carrying their corn pounders, which were a sign of office. They were just like hysterical. And in 1724, Lafayette was writing one of the first early anthologies, was practically hysterical. You can read it in his documents. He was screaming, "Hermaphrodites! Oh, they outrage nature! Oh, all these people, women dressed like men, men dressed like women. Oh, what should we do?" Because that was considered a real outrage to Europeans. And there's one pretty funny little event when John Eckwell was a Moravian missionary. At 16, he was adopted by the Turtle clan of the Lenapes. They gave him his spirit name, which he was so stupid he didn't know he should say out loud, so he recorded it. But they also, once he was adopted, they handed him his skirt and his corn pounder because the Lenapes were gendered female. So all Lenapes at the time were gendered female. And he was practically hysterical at the thought that he was going to be wearing a skirt. But all that meant is we had appointed them judges. They had a regular job. Everybody's got a job. Their job was to be the judges. He didn't understand that, so he wouldn't wear a skirt. All right, so there were marks of office, and women would wear, you can see the collars here, the necklaces and the collars, badges of office. You can see her here. And she's receiving what she's receiving here is wampum. Whenever you went to another council, you had to bring your authorization. So this belt here was her authorization to come and speak to this council. It's sort of like carrying your passport if you're going to Canada or Mexico or Europe or Asia. You need your passport or they're not going to let you in. Right? There's a rumor that's still in all the textbooks that wampum was money. No, it was not money. It was a writing system. It was a character writing system, something like old Chinese. Certain characters meant certain things. And so this belt would have had the characters on it saying what her office was and who sent her and how she was authorized to be there. I know some of what those characters are. A few other people still know, but the last fluent reader of wampum died in the 1920s. It was like 1922. There is a full set of wampum, the Gayuino. It's I believe, Akwesasne, which is one of the reservations. They don't take it out much because wampum is made of quahog shells, beads. So you make these little beads out of the shell. And obviously they can be crushed easily. There was purple and there was white. Purple was called black. So you had black characters on white or white characters on black. And if the character was white, it meant one thing. If it was purple, it meant another thing. It was a very complex writing system. But the thing of that was, you didn't have to all speak the language to be able to read the characters. Just like old Chinese characters, anybody across Asia could read them regardless of their language because the character always meant the same thing. It was not sound-based, it was image-based. So she's bringing her wampum to present to this woman, authorizing her as speaker or an official. All right, pounding out the corn, that's why you had a corn pounder. See this woman right here in the middle? She's got the corn pounder. When the corn kernels are first out, they can be very, very hard. So we had these big, huge pounders and we drop right on the corn. And eventually that hard kernel would be smooth and flour, would turn into flour so we can make things. So we likened taking a hard problem and pounding on it, pounding on it, pounding on it until it was all smoothed out. And that was our metaphor of judging. So an image of a little corn pounder and a mop, that would be a judge. That would mean judging something. So you can see the different tasks that people were running, the women were running here in this particular picture. So she's pounding out the corn so they can make dinner. But all judges are female, whether or not they're men. Doesn't matter, all female. Women were chiefs, and that's something the textbooks really need to catch up to. At least half and better than half of all public officials, female, were civil chiefs. War chiefs were usually, but not always, male. We have female war chiefs. But civil chiefs pretty much were in charge of everything domestically going on. War chiefs are like military generals or colonels. All right, here's one. This is an image of de Gaulle. You may know her as Molly Brandt. She was Mohawk. What we used to do when a new group came in with a language we didn't know, we would get some adolescents who would be volunteers. We wouldn't just send them, they'd be volunteers. You go over there and you learn, in this instance, you go learn English. And then you come back to us a few years, you know English and you know Mohawk, so now you can translate. And we expected the Europeans to send some of their adolescents to learn our language and go back, but somehow they never got around to it. Anyway, one of the jobs of the civil chiefs here, like the Commandante, was to decide the fate of captives. Any captive taken in war, one of two things would happen: be adopted or be executed. Now, under Whitman's law, matriarchal law, you didn't just keep people endlessly as prisoners the way Europeans would. We would replace anybody your side killed. You would have to provide somebody to take the place of whoever you killed in our nation so your population would continue. So almost all of the people taken in any kind of an action were adopted in, especially when children are always adopted in. Men, some might be executed. Why were they executed? Not because we were savages and bloodthirsty, but because they committed crimes against humanity. The Europeans committed a lot of crimes against the Indians, so some of them would be executed for their crimes. And it was up to the female chiefs here, the Commandante, to decide the fate of these captives. This is actually from 1781, talking about the Lenape peacewomen, the civil chiefs. Hector had been taken prisoner. On all occasions where they made a halt, that is the march, as they were on their way to the women of the village, and he wasn't being very specific about it, it was the chiefs, would take over the prisoners, and they would stand by them, feed them, and take care of them, provision them, until such time as they went on. That was another thing the civil chiefs did. Here's another chief. This is called Queen. The Europeans would call any civil chief a queen, because they didn't know what it was. Her name is Catherine Montour. And yes, she's Seneca. Chilquahuaga was her town. Her name is Catherine Montour, which sounds French, but what we would do is anybody who was notable in a prior generation, we would turn their name into a title of office and then it would pass down. One of the things the clan mothers did was keep all the names. And you could not give somebody a name that was already being used. So for as long as I'm alive, nobody else in the family can be named Barbara because I'm learning that name. We don't want to confuse the spirits now. And so names would pass down as titles of office if that person was notable in a prior generation. And the original Catherine Montour, who had been named by the Europeans, even though she was Seneca, was a very notable and wise person. So her name passed down, and her great grandniece, this one, received that name. She led war during the 1779 campaign in the American Revolution to wipe out the Iroquois. And she was a chief who had to take over as a war chief for a while. By the way, my name, Barbara, was passed down. My great, maybe another great grandmother had been captured. She always put it as captured in the story by the French nuns and thrown into one of their schools for Indian children. She refused to get with the program, so the French nuns were really disgusted and they called her La Barbara, which means the barbarian. When she was 16, she stole a canoe and paddled down across the Lake Erie, down to Maumee to where she knew the Hunnets were, and they adopted her in, of course. But she didn't get rid of her name, La Barbara. She kept it because she earned that name. So it passed down through the generations. So my name isn't actually Barbara, it's the Barbara. And I used to be called the Barbara. That's what La Barbara is. So I'm a barbarian, right? But that was a notable name, and I was given that name to carry forward. Here you see a Lenape woman. This is from a drawing done in 1634. Lenape woman, she's dressed as a soldier. She's obviously a man. The Dutch who drew this decided that he was her husband. Nah, he'd be her brother. He was the primary male figure in the family. Was not a woman's husband or the man she produced children with, but her brother. Very common pattern in matriarchy is that the maternal brother is the role model for little boys, like this kid right here. Notice he's got a little bow and arrow, even though she's got a hatchet and he's got a hatchet. That's because you don't want the little kids hurting themselves. More likely to hurt themselves on a hatchet than on a bow and arrow. So he's got his little bow and arrow there. Anyway, she's a soldier. She's a soldier. And I was given a warrior's name too. I told them I didn't want it. They said too bad. So I've got a warrior's spirit name. Women alone controlled all the food, all the housing, all the land. They alone owned it by law. And that was true throughout the woodlands, although I'm pulling up the Iroquois Constitution here because we have a modern version of it. It was formed in the year 1142, second oldest constitutional democracy in the world. The oldest was actually the Icelandic Hall thing, which was set up in 932 to 936, that date range. But our Constitution says women are the progenitors of the nation. Remember the woman on from the sky, progenitors of the nation. They shall own the land and the soil, which means anything else on it or produced by it. That's law in the Constitution. So here she is an Iroquois woman. And she's got by the way, a war hatchet here too. Yeah, they were more concerned, Europeans were more concerned with the soldiers than anybody else because they might fight them. So the housing, this is actually Algonquin housing. The long houses, they were long because an entire lineage was living there under the grandmother of that lineage. So this was probably the grandmother, and then here would be when her daughters or granddaughters would set up their own, there'd be the smaller ones because their family wasn't as big yet. And the Iroquois housing was actually rectangular instead of a curved. It might have a bit of a curve on the top, but it would by and large be rectangular. So this is more Algonquin. This would be Lenape, Mohegan, Lenape. In any case, this was supposed to be Manhattan in the 1500s. Women owned all the food. Okay, now if you're going to control people, that's a good way to do it because they don't eat if you make grandma mad. So I'm going to stay on the good side of grandma. This is a drawing by Jessica around 1910, more or less, about when he was drawing these. This would have been his great-great-great-grandfather, Saganayo, who would go out in the cornfield to talk to the spirit of corn. If you see there, that's the spirit of corn. Even though the women's crops and corn are female, one of the three sisters, the tassel, corn tassel growing up here, and see how he's got a little tassel here. That would be Otitsa, that would be male. Because it's reaching up, going up to the sky. Anything that grows straight up is associated with males, like mountains straight up. Anything that's a cave-like, womb-like is female, so all caves are going to be female. So the top of corn here, the tassels, that is female. So when Jacques Chachet, who was the first grandmother of the Iroquois, Seneca, when she was involved in the war against the mound builders to set up democracy, and that was in the 12th century, her war plume was the corn tassel, corn silk. So here's Ganyadayo, who was a prophet. He came out to talk to the spirit of corn who's going to whisper in his ear there. But the women alone on the corn. This is another, oh, I'm sorry, I put it on the side where, at least on my screen, all the pictures of people are. But here, over here, you can see a field up here. This is a European conception. We actually had planting mounds. We didn't like stupid. We thought it was stupid. That's what the stoop was. But so we made mounds, which were conceived of as breasts of Mother Earth. And then we would plant the corn in the top, the green beans are on the base, and the green beans would crawl up. They were like a little sister crawling up their big sister. And if you've got little kids around the house and you were older, you know how they'll climb up your leg. So that was the little sister of beans. And then every third or fourth mound, we'd plant the squash because squash is a runner. Boom, it'll just run all over. So you can only plant it every third or fourth, otherwise it'll take over everything, you know, the loud little sister running around making noise. So that's how we'd set it up. So they've got a cornfield here with just corn because it was hard for Europeans to understand co-planting. That was not something they did, so they didn't understand it. So instead of seeing what they saw, they'd see what they expected to see and draw it that way. This was from a 1590 drawing by John White. Okay, we held all the prisoners for adoption or execution, as I said. Now, if I were one of these three guys, I wouldn't hold out a lot of hope. They're clearly marked for execution. The rest, they're going to be adopted. So I don't know what these three guys did, but it was something pretty bad. This made the Europeans crazy because in their culture, women did not decide the fate of anybody. Still less did they hold captive, still less did they run executions. We did. Okay, here is a case of adoption. This is supposed to be little Mary Jemison. who was Seneca. She became an adoptee and much loved by everybody. In fact, to this day, her name Jemison is a very proud name. For Seneca with that name, very proud name. Women and children were always adopted, always adopted. If you were a woman, you were going to be killed. You had better have done something really bad. That almost never happened. Children certainly adopted. And here she's being undressed from her European clothes to be dressed again as a little Seneca girl. She became the Kwamis, and she was had married first to a Lenape man whom she loved very much, and then after he died, Seneca man that she respected, and I don't get the origin, she loved him that well, but this was her as a little girl. She was actually taken about the age of 12 and raised, and of course she was adopted. And here we are conducting executions. I'm bashing this guy. This guy's got a rope around his middle held by a couple different people. You can see this guy's holding this guy's holding. And the women are running this execution. Well, it looks like they're letting men whack him, although she's coming up, take a shot. Sometimes the prisoner would be clubbed to death. Most often he'd be burnt. And this is a depiction of one of the executions that the women would have ordered. And so he would be burnt to a crisp, is what he would be, because we didn't want any trace of him left, and his ashes would be scattered so that they couldn't be coalesced. That was reserved for really bad criminals. And the Europeans, of course, just went bananas when they saw women doing it. And that's where women got their reputation. Oh, the savage. Even though they executed people in really horrible ways themselves. Okay, we impeached a lot of people. And here was a guy. I'll get to it here in my own. The guy McCarthy. He was impeached. He was the sitting chair of the Men's Grand League. And he was impeached in 1846 because he was violating orders. It's something like impeaching a president. You didn't do it often, but if it really made you angry enough, and that's what that name means. He makes them angry. And that became his name after he was impeached. Afterwards, he didn't have a place. And here's an actual photograph of him after he was impeached. He was impeached in 1874. This was probably about 1885, 1890. He was still alive in 1909, and nobody quite knows what happened to him when he died, probably 1910, 1912. What was his crime? He converted to Christianity. And that may strike Americans. Oh, it's an individual. No, it wasn't, because Christians who converted were used by the missionary to force conversion on everybody else. Extremely disruptive to the culture, because it brought in all these attitudes and behaviors and values that simply were not Seneca, were not Iroquois, were not Woodland at all. In the first place, it was patriarchal, not patriarchal. In the second place, laws were very, very different. So this was very disruptive to culture at the time. So he was impeached and thrown out of office. So, of course, the United States, being very patriarchal at the time, was quite horrified by the power of women exhibited in this culture. So they took it upon themselves to civilize us, which meant taking away all women's power, crushing the third and fourth genders, forcing people into sexual stereotypes, and that was civilized. So here they've got a bunch of little girls, and they're forcing them to do nothing but girl work. And you can see the missionaries stand over the person. This was missionaries who were all male, of course, Indian agents, all male. Federal officials, all male. Reservation officials, all male. And they did really horrible things to the women to force them to and including killing them if they wouldn't do the program. And this is a photograph of the little girls being forced into girl mode. And you can see behind them some little boys being forced into boy mode. You know, their little pinafores, their little heads. And if you look at it, this little girl on the left kind of looks like my cousin. If you look at them, they do not look very happy to me.
No.
So there were no more female leaders in the programs the Europeans had. Now those on the reservations, they could force into a lot of things, although the women resisted very heavily until the 1840s, 1848. They could not force the women. And that's the point where they just flatly outlawed female leaders. You were not allowed. They imposed a phony constitution on us. And then 1868, another one that was even worse. That was after the Civil War. It was like before and after the Civil War. But they've been trying since 1818 with the first Intercourse Act to do this. And this continued through the Civil Rights era. Indigenous women, in fact, indigenous people, did not get their rights back until the Civil Rights Act from 63 to 65. Not only were for African Americans, but for Native Americans. So Native Americans are well aware of what Dr. Martin Luther King did for us too. Although a lot of people seem unaware of that. A lot of women did not get back the right to vote, even though they were also considered American citizens until 1964, 65. I like here, let me get down to it. It's Minnie Spotted Wolf. And you can see she refused to get with the program. She's gendered male there as a hunter. Good for you, Minnie. So right now, people are still seeking to reclaim their former cultural powers and their former cultural ways. One of the things that I was charged with by my elders was to set the record straight. So I've been doing my best here. Iroquois Women, first book, well, actually the second book was the first big thing I did. Came out in the year 2000, and that was reseeding the matriarchy based on the old laws and pulling up all the documentation for that. And the second one, this came out in 2016, Spirits of Blood, Spirits and Breath. It's talking about the twin cosmos and the proper interface that's constantly in motion and shifting. So the idea is to keep Ugi, Oregon, and the Orenda balance. So that's what I've got for you today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mann. Would we have questions for Dr. Mann? We sure would give some applause, but do we have any questions? Do we have any questions in Facebook or YouTube? Well, I thought that was very interesting. The Europeans must have had to crush the women to get rid of the matriarchy.
They worked on it for 400 years. There's a book by Karen Anderson that's quite good. She starts with the earliest French missionaries. You know, Cartier got up there in 1534, 35. And the very first French missionaries in, of course, horrified. And they got the lowest elements of the men, the ones that weren't in office, you know, the Schofields, and gave them power as Christian captains and advised them on the first things they said when the women wouldn't cooperate with them, chain her by 1 foot. And that's the name of Karen Anderson's book, Chain Her by 1 Foot. And she goes through what all the early missionaries did and force women into the oppressed mode of Western women. Great storyteller.
We have a question at Facebook.
Hmm?
They are saying, what a great storyteller you are, Dr. Mann. What were the third and fourth genders?
Well, gay and lesbian. We called it women who like women, men who like men. And typically they were considered boundary crossers. You know, they're, I know that an awful lot of, there's an urban legend out there that, oh, gay people are two-spirited. No, everybody's two-spirited. I have the spirit of blood I got from my mother. I have the spirit of breath I got from my father. Those are my two spirits. And it's my job as the personality of this life to coordinate their agendas, keeping that on the balance, right? Third and fourth genders are something entirely else. They're boundary crossers, right? Something that looks like a natural boundary to what the rest of us, right? And me liking men or men liking women seems almost a natural boundary, but there are people who walk right across it with ease. Whoa, you know, we've got a lot of animals we respect for doing that, like bears. Bears are animals, they walk on all fours, but they also walk on twos. They eat exactly the same diet as human beings. They walk on twos, and he lives in a house. Okay, right? Oh my, he's a boundary. He must know more than the rest of us. We should listen to him. Serpents have a really good reputation with us. Why? Well, they can live in water. They can live on the land. They can live under the ground. They can live in trees. That's 4 different places they can live. Whoa! Boundary crossing. He must know more than the rest of us. We should listen to him. So gays and lesbians. Whoa! Wow, they must know more than the rest of us. So they're usually a shaman.
We have more questions? Did they have somebody assigned to tell the stories of the group?
There would be people who were better at it than others, because you know there are people who are better telling stories than others. Usually by default they would wind up doing it. But in everybody's family, you know, it was usually the elders. It was primarily the elders. You would go and they say, "Oh, grandmother or grandfather, you've lived many years. You must have seen many things, and you know so much more than I. What can you tell me? Things past or things unseen." And then they tell you. And after a while, you knew which one would tell the best stories. My great-grandmother was really good storyteller.
My grandfather was a great storyteller.
Every family's got the person or persons that were really good at it, and you just kind of know who they were.
Do we have any other questions for Dr. Mann this afternoon?
Well, there's a question from YouTube and from Camille. It says, do you have any suggestions for resources to explore this further?
Well, I've got certainly my books if you want to. The Iroquois Women, which is not considered a classic, it's taught all over the world. And Spirits of Blood, Spirits of Breath. People really like that one too. I tried to write them in a non-academic way so that you didn't have to have a PhD to understand what I was saying. Some of my other things are more pure history, but there are other people besides me writing as well. Once you start seeing us cite each other, you get an idea of who the people are.
Thank you.
So are there more questions? Anybody from Facebook wanting to know anything this afternoon?
No, I think the Facebook question, last one was about the third and fourth genders, but that's pretty much that. And then you've heard the one from YouTube.
Well, I would like to thank you so very much Dr. Mann.
Okay.
As always, you just bring to us fresh material. I love the stories too. I love the color in the slides. I love the authenticity that you find to put in them. We are blessed indeed that you were able to share your work with us today. I also enjoyed the HIV and the Rust Belt. I thought that was pretty fabulous too. And before anybody does anything else, you need a code word, and I have 2 prizes I can give away. So, first thing I would like to do is I would like to give a shout out for Ben. Go Ben! Yay, Ben! Ben is the chair of the communication department, and he has been very supportive of our endeavors. And so has the Honors College. Go Honors, go Honors, rah! And one of my dear friends who always supports us, usually takes around the sign-in book, is here with us. And that's Dr. Mojisola Tiamiu. So rah, 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 Dr. Tiamiu.
Thank you.
You are welcome. She has been a longtime supporter, and she gave us gift cards too. She always buys books. She always comes and works. I tell you, I am so lucky. Now, we do have a couple prizes to give. And I would like to say again that the gift cards were very fortunate. The provost was very supportive. The bookstore, Barnes & Noble Bookstore, Honors College, the College of Arts and Letters, the Communication Department, Dr. Tiamiu, Vicki Crowell, and then I give some too. So we have the gift cards to give away. So the code word, you need to write this down if you want attendance for, if you're in Facebook or you're in Zoom or you're on YouTube, you need to know this code word. It's 3 this time. It's part-time Indian. It's part of a title of a book by Alexei Sherman, and it's about the experiences of a young person on a reservation. And can you see the, I tried to share.
Yeah.
Well, this was the first one. This book for the first presentation, I chose Pride because it was made, the flag was made, and it's a book about how they made the flag to symbolize unity and love and rights for everybody. And then this one, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. The title comes because the boy decides that he will go into town and get an education in town, and he's the only Native American one there. It's won a bunch of prizes. It has been discussed. They did a little film about it on American Experience PBS. And one of the teachers who teaches this book, and it's been challenged in her school, said that it's what resiliency looks like. This is what being beaten down by society, being beaten down literally by so-called friends and people in your community looks like. But you get up, you try again and again. Those are the 2 primary reasons why I wanted the kids to read this book. And so I chose those keywords for attendance, and the book is a classic, I think. And it just shows the struggles of people who live on that reservation. And it's told from the perspective of the young protagonist in it. Now, you get a question. here is the question. So put on your think cap so you can get the $20 gift card to Barnes and Noble. And the question is, people in Continental Ohio band of mice and men. Who wrote it? People in Continental Ohio band of mice and men. Who wrote it? So who's the author of Mice and Men? So
There's a Zoom answer, John Steinbeck,
and who gave
Done.
the answer?
Tiara.
Okay,
That's
so
my favorite Arthur.
And then
There
in,
is a
in
YouTube answer as well.
there's YouTube by Natalie, John Steinbeck, yeah.
and what's the last name?
And
And-
then in Facebook, that's Elizabeth Wheeler, that's John Steinbeck. So Natalie Bresnay.
His name. And then for Facebook, it's
Elizabeth Wheeler.
Elizabeth
Yeah.
Wheeler.
Now the
Oh.
question was, do you mean part-time with a hyphen or part-time just separate?
The author put the hyphen in it.
No, the code word. Would that be part-time with a hyphen or
Either way,
either way? Okay.
we will accept either way. But the author uses the hyphen. Good
Yes,
question.
yes.
Now we need the emails. We have to have emails for all the winners. And I hope that, yes, Moji. I can't hear you. Turn on the mic.
Shout out to Natalie Brasnay. She's one of my students.
Well, yay, yay, Natalie. Rah, rah, rah. Yay, Tiara, she's one of mine. Rah, rah, rah. And we have Elizabeth. Way to go. Good job. Now, tomorrow, oh boy, tomorrow is kind of an arts day here at Virtual Band Books. Our folk singer, Risa Cohen, will be with us. And she's going to sing to us a song called Old Man Trump. And it's about Trump's father, because Woody Guthrie's father got into a quarrel with Trump's father over the rent in New York City. And then the son, Woody, wrote a song about it. And so she will be singing that and other songs as well. And then in the afternoon, we will be hearing from Warren Woodbury. And Warren is a Toledo author, and he spent about 50 years of his life studying religious texts and how they and the passages in them that mistreat women or demean women. And he will be doing we have 2 videos, Arjun, from him.
3 actually, because I've actually added 3 episodes. The first episode, and then the second and third. So they've split that up into 3 episodes.
Okay, so we have 3 episodes, and that should be lots of fun. And that will be tomorrow, and I believe we begin tomorrow at noon again. And I urge you to come back. I urge you to tell your friends. Come right into the Zoom room. You know anybody who wants in the Zoom room, have them email me. I'll send the link. Have them email any of us, and we'll send the link for it. This is the best day of the year. It's the Band Books Week vigil to celebrate our right to read and think freely. Long live the book.
Long live the book.
Read on.
Read on.
And I guess, Arjun, do you need to say anything to anybody?
Well, the question, be patient with the recordings, because once we end the meeting, Zoom is going to start processing the video, and then who knows when it's going to be, how long it takes here. I dare not even do it at home because it's going to be even longer. So it'll probably be ready tomorrow. And I think we have 2 presentations, so and your introduction, so 3 little pieces, 1 short one and 2 long ones, and those are going to be on by the time we start our next tomorrow's meetings or
That is-
presentations.
That is wonderful. That is really cool, because then you can tell your friends too that if they would like to see today's programs, that by tomorrow afternoon, they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, they can click on the link in the event program, and that will take them to the actual presentation, the recorded versions.
That will be wonderful. Thank you for doing that for us, Arjun.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.